Maverick News presents The Rick Walker Show. Defrag your mind.
Good evening, Maverick family. Good evening, new viewers from all over the world. I expect we'll have a very large audience tonight because of the subject matter that we're covering, which will include review and analysis of the confrontation between protesters and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau yesterday in Belleville. But tonight, we have a special guest joining us. Kyle Kemper will be here, and he's going to answer a few questions, give us his thoughts on what happened to his brother, Justin Trudeau, yesterday in Belleville. Probably even more important than that, though, Kyle Kemper will talk about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Kyle has become a big supporter of RFK Jr., even took some time to meet with the presidential candidate in person. They spent some time together. He'll talk about that and tell us why he thinks that RFK Jr. is the best man for the job in the White House. But I know all of you are eager to find out what Kyle will be thinking about how can I even describe that yesterday? That was an exhibition of emotion on the streets of Belleville, where JT was there to make sort of a campaign style stop in town and meet with some local municipal politicians. But he had to cut his trip there short because the crowd that gathered was, to say the least, very vocal. And the big question surrounding all of that is what was being shouted at the Prime Minister. We'll talk about that. Were some of those insults being hurled at the Prime Minister yesterday anti-Semitic? We'll let you be the judge in a moment. What else do we have for you tonight? Well, next week they will be having hearings, inquiries into unexplained, unidentified flying objects or aerial objects. So we'll show you what's going on with that as a preview of what's to come next Wednesday for those hearings. Also, Joe Biden today addressing artificial intelligence. He kind of shuffled in, made a statement, and shuffled out and refused to answer some important questions as he made his way out the door. We'll show you video of that. Donald Trump. He says if he's reelected, he will impose the death penalty on anyone who gets involved in human trafficking. This after seeing the Sound of Freedom movie. So we'll have that story as well. What else can I tell you? Those are the main highlights for tonight. We'll have that statement from Trump as well. But let's get right to the nitty gritty. Let's get down to it. Let's get to the main story of the night. The angry protesters who confronted Justin Trudeau in Belleville. That's going to be what we'll talk about first up, and then we'll go to the interview with Justin Trudeau's brother, Kyle Kemper. They both have the same mother, Margaret. And Kyle has been on this program before, generously has agreed to give us some of his time here today, and we're looking forward to having the conversation. I will be right back.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals. Defenders of individual rights and freedoms. Credible. Trusted. Grounded in reality. Maverick News. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, I'm back. Please consider subscribing on YouTube. If you're watching on Facebook, on the one page we're allowed to broadcast on right now, please consider sharing this out. Also, please consider subscribing over on Rumble, the free speech platform. We're on over there and growing every day, and we're growing on YouTube as well. But Rumble is where it's at, man, because that's where we're not going to get banned and censored like we have been on other platforms. But if you do subscribe on YouTube, make sure you hit that notification bell. And what else can I say except that if you haven't seen this video, I'll run it for you now to give you the lay of the land here so you understand exactly what it is we're talking about. This was Justin Trudeau being confronted by angry protesters in Belleville yesterday. This video shot by Chris Stacy.
You're a pathetic kid! You are a pathetic kid! You're all a bunch of pathetic off the street! Off the You're a pathetic kid! You are a pathetic kid! You're all a bunch of pathetic off the street! Off the
So that is an edited version of the video shot by Chris yesterday. You can hear clearly someone shouting what sounds like "you're a pathetic," and then there's the anti-Semitic remark that comes with that. That wasn't just one person who said that, by the way. In the longer version of the video, I believe I hear another person yell the same thing. You can assess whether that is what is said or not for yourself and decide how you, as an individual human being, feel about that. We'll maybe talk about it a little more as we get into it. But here's another video from another angle showing kind of what happened yesterday with Justin Trudeau in Belleville. So there's that. And here's another angle. I'll bring it back for you. Here we go. Obviously, some people not very happy with the Prime Minister. Let me see if I can find the longer version here of the original video that we had for you, so you can get more context. Here we go. Here we go.
You're a traitor, Trudeau!
You're the fucking commies! Get out of Canada! Communist bastard! Communist bastard! Fuck Trudeau! 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 Fuck you! You wanted Trudeau! You fucking criminal! You guys shouldn't represent him. That's fucking loser.
Beat it, Trudeau!
You fucking killer! Get going! Get going! You're a fucking piece of shit! Get the fuck out! Fuck you! Fuck you! Fuck you!
You're a pathetic Jew! You are a pathetic Jew! You're all a bunch of pathetic. Off the street! Off the street!
Chill out!
Off the street, please! Off the street! Keep going backwards, please! Back up!
You want to talk? You really talk? That's right, fucking run! Run, Trudeau!
Back,
Run,
Trudeau!
bud! Run away!
You must buy your pants at the same place the other guy bought his pants. One of yours
What fucking guy did I see get pushed? You know how many women I did? Oh, you
You suck, Trudeau. You need security. You fucking loser. Fuck you, Trudeau.
So there has been a response from, well, various organizations, reaction. Here's a response from the Friends of the Simon Wiesenthal Center. It says here a video is being shared widely on social media that depicts a protester in Belleville yelling, "You're a pathetic Jew." At least twice, it was more than that, to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Protest is essential to any democracy, but hatred spreads when it is tolerated. We urge any media sharing the video to condemn this vile expression of anti-Semitism. So I bring you that. And I'm wondering what kind of response that will bring from the chat tonight. Does anyone see their point of view on this? Not sure. Well, we'll get into that with Justin Trudeau's brother, Kyle Kemper, when we return. Don't go away. The full interview coming up right here.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News, the antivirus program for your mind.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
So just before we go to Kyle Kemper's interview, I just wanted to rewind to last January because a similar thing happened, kind of at a similar level, which you may recall. Emotions were running high. The Prime Minister was in Hamilton for a big event, a big Liberal event, and this is what that looked like, just to jog your memory.
You can see they've hung up tablecloths so nobody can look inside. Sorry for my shakiness. I'm freezing. Oh, here we go. Secret security. Trudeau, you fucking monster. You're an asshole. You're destroying this country. You are destroying this country. You are dividing this country. Trudeau. Trudeau. Trudeau, look at me. Look at me. Look at me. Look at me, Trudeau. You're a monster. You have blood on your hands. Blood on your hands. You monster. Don't touch me. I'm not doing anything wrong. Trudeau, you're a monster. Look at this monster. Look at him laughing. You have blood on your hands. You have blood on your hands. You will be held accountable. You will be held accountable. You will be. You will be held accountable, you monster. You monster.
So that was last January. Let me just bring this up. Here we are. Just want to show you this as well, just to kind of give you an idea of who's involved with this. So there's that sign. We've seen that a lot of times at a lot of protests. WEF and Trudeau must go. That's the Hamilton group of freedom fighters. And oops, what happened there? Let me just go back. Go forward again. Yeah, when you're watching a lot of these videos, it's the same, sort of the same people from the same area, right? Because they're out there very active in these protests. Anyway, that was last January, so it gives you a good sense of what's going on out there. Scale is important. Perspective on these things is important. Knowledge of whether this is happening just organically, that is to say that a crowd is developing just naturally because people are upset and people who are not associated with each other are coming out and engaging in protests just spontaneously? Or is this a case of something that is organized, choreographed? Are we watching political theater? Is this somewhat staged, in other words? I would say, given what we're witnessing, it is somewhat staged. insofar as people are being told that the prime minister is coming, you have an organized group, people who know each other, they're politically active, they are political activists, protesters, who I think from what we're seeing are probably engaged on a regular basis out there protesting. And this was one of their protests. And in this particular case, things really got ramped up, amped up, a lot of energy there, a lot of frustration, which I understand. Not thrilled about the language used. Not happy about that. I have to be completely honest with you. Don't like it. But you know what? I've called it out before. Many times I've told you there is a problem out there within the freedom movement. People just aren't willing to acknowledge it. I guess you just kind of want to look the other way and pretend that there's nothing there. But what can I do other than just run the video, show people, and illustrate the obvious? But if you just want to pick a side and you don't really care about what's right and what's wrong, that's your choice. It's entirely your choice. Let's take another break, and when we come back, we really will get into the interview with Kyle Kemper. I'll be right back.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
And joining us now is Kyle Kemper. Hello, Kyle. Welcome back to the show. Thank you so much for taking the time today. Great to have you back.
My pleasure.
And you have your Kennedy hat on and your Kennedy shirt, Kennedy 24. You're
Let's
kind of
go.
all in. You're on the Kennedy bus. What is
Yeah,
it?
I actually.
What is it that drew you to Kennedy? What is it that got you involved with that?
Well, I remember watching one of his speeches about 8 months ago, and he was just speaking so much truth, and was being very kind of, I don't know, impeccable with his words. When talking about a whole myriad of subjects. And to listen to him talk about, obviously, like in the pharmaceutical industry is one thing, but also like foreign policy, and then as well, like telling the stories of his uncle and his father growing up in that arena. The office of the presidency is it's the highest job in the land. It's ultimately for the person who should be most qualified for that role, and it's not a joke. And I think over the last I'll say honestly, over the last many decades, the office has been kind of usurped, and many of the leaders who have been there are not exceptionally well qualified for it. And after listening to Kennedy, it became, my kind of conclusion or assertion is that he is the most qualified man to be president, and he has a very refreshing take and is speaking truth around a lot of issues. And there are some great issues facing both America, Canada, and the world. And America is kind of the the leader, let's say, and what takes place in America will have a trickle effect across the rest of the world. And so one of the little memes that I made around Kennedy was, this idea of not just make America great again, like the Trump mega thing was, but mega make Earth great again. And that if if Kennedy can come into the White House and achieve the David versus Goliath victory, I think it can send out positive ripples across the world, and we can enter a much better state.
So how are you involved with the campaign? Are you working directly with the campaign team, or are you just doing things on your own? I noticed you have some sort of a brochure, a pamphlet that you're trying to promote and distribute.
Yeah, I've got this. So I actually was down in Sarasota, and I met some of the old Ron Paul organizers who were very, very involved with Ron Paul's 2008 and 2012 campaign. And one of the things they did is they made this thing called a super brochure, and it is 4 panels by 4 panels, so 8 panels of information, absolutely chock full of it. And they did this for Ron Paul, and back in 2012, they distributed brochures to every resident in Iowa, and it actually resulted in Ron Paul getting, I think, 26% of the vote there. And this is flyers are one thing, but like an excellent brochure like this can be something that someone sits down and reads with and spends time. And not everybody's on Twitter, and not everybody's watching alternative media or gaining access. So by presenting a high quality brochure, I think that's that's a really effective ground game tool, and to help spread a message. And the per unit cost on these is incredibly low. It's like for $100 you get 700 of them. So versus for $100 you get 3 hats. So 700, 3 hats. Obviously you get a hat. It's very fun. It's something to wear. It's something that you can kind of put into. But with these brochures, it's a means to actually be very kind of effective. So I'm just supporting these guys. It's foreverfree.com if you're interested in learning more about the brochures. But again, in the spirit of grassroots organization and campaigning, I'm just a node in this whole thing. I'm not officially involved with the campaign in any way, shape, or form. And I was in Miami when Bobby was speaking at the North American Bitcoin Conference, or the BTC Miami, and I had my art at the time, and actually so inspired by Bobby that I got rid of all the blockchain stuff, made it Kennedy across America, and met this incredible artist called Calais who did this beautiful mural of Bobby on the side of the bus. And then we did the big Kennedy 2024, like really big on it. And then we kind of turned it into this this grassroots kind of activation point. And I've driven it all across America. I drove from Sarasota all the way up to Chatham, Massachusetts, at the tip of Cape Cod, for when we participated in the Chatham 4th of July parade, which was amazing, and got the bus right in it, and picked up some local supporters and had signs, and we're giving away stickers and little placards, and that went really well. And then after that, I actually got a call. I was just sitting with outside of one of the supporters' house, and it was raining, and my phone rang, and it was Kyle. It's Bobby Kennedy here. I just want to say thank you for everything you're doing. And if you're going to be in Cape Cod for the next couple of days, I'd love for you to join me for lunch. So I had not made any effort to reach out or to get in contact. I had a sense that everything kind of would come together when it did. And so we ended up going for lunch, and I drove him around Hyannisport in the bus. We were waving at people, and we actually went to the dump station to dump the black water and the gray water, and connect with a whole bunch of the local union boys who are super stoked on Bobby, and represent a lot of people. And and then having a chance to actually be with him too, I recognize this is an incredibly well qualified man, and he's very intelligent, very humble. He's impeccable with his words, and he's taking this bold approach of not attacking people, not speaking ill about individuals or putting words to others' intentions. He'll be critical above policies, but not like specifically, pointing light on individuals. And I think he's, he's done 150 podcasts in the last year and a half, like himself as the RFK podcast, where he's interviewing subject matter experts across the spectrum. So he's very, well schooled on all sorts of different topics. And then since, announcing his presidency, he's just been on an absolute tear of appearing on podcasts left, right, and center, and with very large audiences, and engaging in long form discussions. And ultimately, I think for the viewers of that, it's really a way to understand who this man is and connect, because we're moving past this age of the soundbite kind of politics and getting
Right.
into larger, free flowing discussions where you can really understand kind of who a person is. And so far, I mean, I'm just like, yeah, I'm so impressed
But
by Bobby, and I
it
think he's the
seems like
man.
he's going on all these podcasts though that are more conservative. To me, it seems like he's with the wrong party. Thoughts?
Well, the challenge is, I mean, it's he himself has declared, I'm a Democrat, I'm a lifelong Democrat, and in the root of the word liberal is libre, and I think a lot of the libertarian philosophy is also kind of consistent with liberal philosophy. But I'll say that this big Democrat party is a kind of a corrupt machine, and a lot of the the kind of key actors within it and the key spokespeople within it and the key institutions have gotten very extreme, to the point of it's like almost like you could call it communism, you could call it fascism, you could call it some sort of nouveau commie fascism if you want. But there's certainly, I mean, this is one of the things I like about the bus, is you go out there and you actually see the people and like see the reactions and engage with people. And I've seen Democrats, independents, and Republicans all saying they are incredibly impressed and they support this man and this vision. And and Bobby said it himself, it's like, I want to convince independent or Republicans they're not Republicans, and Democrats they're not Democrats. And how do we foster dialogue to heal this divide? Because my goodness, I mean, I don't know if you saw the Senate hearing yesterday, but it's very divided, and it's constant, like it's bullshit bickering
It's
all the time.
absolutely dysfunctional
And
is what it was when I watched that yesterday. It was just it was exactly what Kennedy has pointed out. It was divisive. It was I think dysfunctionality on display politically.
well, and a lot of these, like, and it was interesting too, because like he's testifying and it's all the Republicans who are asking, like, trying to have him answer questions. Then all the Democrats, all like, without question, they just smeared him. And they just like they put words into his own mouth, they defamed, they libeled. It was a hearing on censorship, and the very first thing they did is put forth a motion to have him removed from the panel. It's
Right. Yeah.
it's
To shut him up, to
it's
censor him.
like
Yeah.
how, I mean, and this begets a larger issue, which is truth stands up to debate. Lies require censorship. So as soon as you're starting to talk truth to subjects where lies dominate, and livelihoods have been, and entire industries and movements have been predicated based on lies and myths, as soon as there's truth speaking, and a request for dialogue and discussion, in a free and open democratic society, or in a republic, you expect to be able to have differing opinions and be able to come together and engage in a discussion towards creating the best informed outcome possible. But there's fear on the side of the, I don't know, let's call it the establishment Democrats or the big Democrats, that you can't talk about, the efficacy or the strategy behind the lockdowns, or, the end result of funding a proxy war, and, just like
Well, how is he going
promoting and
to
facilitating an endless war.
how is he going to overcome this obstacle that he has within the party? Because, I watched Debbie Wasserman Schultz yesterday, high ranking Democrat, smear him by calling him anti Semitic, racist. She threw every smear in their playbook at him. It's clear that the powerful people within the Democrat Party right now don't want him. And when we see what they did
they
to
don't.
Bernie Sanders, it's like that party doesn't really elect a candidate. They end up selecting one. So how is he
Right,
going
and
to
that's
overcome
why, like,
that?
so I think the solution to overcoming that is through grassroots and through organic support from all sides, and making the case to others and to the Democrats that he is the best chance to win. Now, of these incumbent, I mean, I might say they're corrupt. They're corrupt, but let's not even necessarily say that. Of these who are kind of towing this line and are in this state of hypnosis that what they're doing is the right, just, legal, democratic way of censoring, etc. They're definitely threatened, but ultimately, when a movement occurs and when I think we'll start seeing the signs through the primaries and also in the polls. There's probably going to be that'll be an information war itself in the polls, but ultimately, the people will rally behind those who they believe in, and Bobby is speaking a message of hope. He's incredibly courageous in doing what he's doing, and he's attracting a lot of, like, I think 50% of Americans identify as independents. So if he can get the majority of that vote behind him, it's basically game over. And then when you have so many of the Republicans too are coming to him. I mean, I was at a gas station in Myrtle Beach, North Carolina, or South Carolina, one of them. And some guy came and rapped on my door and just came, and he was wearing this big American t-shirt. I was a little bit put off, but just by the intensity of it all. Then he comes and he's like, I just want to tell you, I'm a Republican. I've been a Republican all my life. I really like Kennedy, and I would vote for him. So it's like, okay, you hear that and hear people declaring that, and then the stories will happen. And now that we're past the the psychological operation of the lockdowns and putting everybody into silos and, like, hypnotizing them with this point of view of the world, and that people are actually engaging and discussing and having open conversations, and like, the trust in the mainstream media is at an all-time low. And people are recognizing, like, whatever they're saying, it's like the opposite. Like, it's almost to the point where it's like whatever they say, like, the opposite. It's almost all some may say it's all lies. So at the end of the day, like, I think it's there's a large movement building, and with my bus is just one, and what I'm doing is trying to, like, validate and test different things. And then with the launch of the brochures getting out there, along with just Bobby himself just doing an amazing job of inspiring people. And I was with a friend in South Carolina, or in New Hampshire, and he just put in a whole gym into his barn, and he's like, yeah, Bobby inspired me to get, like, get into shape. And looking at him at 69 years old, and, like, what the incredible, like, physical shape that he's in, and how he takes care of himself. And there's like, and he has a passion for health and for being, or for encouraging others to be healthy too. So that's how we like really heal the divide and heal the nation, is speaking truth to power, and speaking truth about the food epidemic, and not getting into these little, like, these little issues that become so big and so ever present, but they're really tiny, versus, like, entire climate change, for example, like debate has all centered around CO2, and just like so simplified into CO2 that somehow you can like pay a little bit more on your credit card, or pay a little bit more, and we're magically solving this problem, versus like, okay, let's be good stewards of the planet, and let's reduce pollution, and let's make sure we're not putting toxic substances into our rivers, into our food supplies, into our airs. Let's
Right.
not allow, like, the mass genetic engineering of our food supplies. Let's not engage in unsustainable agricultural practices. Let's look at regenerative agriculture. Let's look at turning a portion of the nation's lawns into gardens, and how do we become a kind of more healthy, self-sustaining, sufficient people, as opposed to you know sugar addicts and consumption addicts, and
Yeah.
so God
I
bless Bobby.
I see him as sort of a populist candidate. I see overlap between the people who support him and the people who support Trump, maybe not on the extreme sides, but in the middle. And I see him as being more of a centrist, populist candidate. Can he unite people? Can he bring people together in that way? Is that fair?
I mean, I believe, yes, absolutely. And he said it himself. He's like, I believe in populism. And, it's funny because, like, up here in Canada, dude, Justin, like, he was making that word out to be a bad word. Like, the idea that, like, the people, like, he who is most popular and loved by the people and has these ideas is somehow a bad thing. Like, populism, like, the Canadian media did a good job at, like, making it sound like a bad word, and they do that with words. They weaponize words.
Yeah.
But Bobby's straight up said, yeah, populism is good. That's how we do it. That's how we heal the divide. We get everybody on board. We understand that at a certain level, absolutely everybody can agree on something. And when you can find that high level that everybody agrees on, okay, we can all break bread at that level. Down below, differences are expected. It's natural. Of no two people are the same. So there's going to be differences. But if we can align on a high level purpose and some ideal outcomes of where we want the nation to go, that's how you create a populist, positive movement that can move above, like, the politics of fear, attack, and division, and into, like, co-creation, solving problems, recognizing that America's is greatest country on earth, some may say, and and rekindling the American spirit. And as a Canadian, I mean, I spend so much time in America too. I've been all over the country. I've driven across it like 6 times, almost every single state, and engaged with people all over. And I'll tell you, Americans are fantastic people, and I'll tell you, Canadians are fantastic people, and you know who else are fantastic people? Mexicans are fantastic people. And you know who else? Cubans are great people. Basically, everywhere in the world is full of beautiful, great people. But there are forces that seek to divide and stratify.
Yeah, well, now more than ever, I think it is important to find a way to bring people together, get away from these political extremes that we're seeing. But yesterday, and I did mention this to you before we started this conversation, your brother, sort of, I'm using the word swarmed by an angry group of people. And I'm going to run this for you because I don't think you've seen this yet. So you can familiarize yourself with it. It's a short clip. And I'd like to get your reaction to this from yesterday when Justin was in Belleville, Ontario. He had to cut this visit wasn't actually able to go in and speak where he wanted to speak.
You're a traitor, Trudeau! You suck! Get out of Canada! Communist Fuck Trudeau! 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 Fuck you! You wanted Trudeau! You fucking criminal! You guys shouldn't represent him. That's fucking loser. Beat it, Trudeau! You fucking cowards! Get going! You're a fucking piece of shit! Get the fuck out! Fuck you! Fuck you! Fuck you! You're a pathetic Jew! You are a pathetic Jew! You're all a bunch of pathetic Jews! Off the street! Off the street! Off the street, please! Off the street! Move people backwards, please! Back up!
All right, that's good, Rick. You get it.
Yeah. Let me just pause that so the audio's out of my head. People shouting at each other. Well, in this case, one way, but I don't.
Not a family-friendly environment. I'll tell you that much. A lot of cursing there, and I think it's symbolic of the deep division, and there's a lot of people, justified or not, who are very angry. And I will say that Justin himself is set up as this energy vacuum to to take in all this hate, and it's to put everything that's occurred, in my opinion, horrendous government policy for the last 3 years, but even further than that, horrendous policy. Somehow it's Justin that's he is the heart of it all. But it's just that is part of the look here, what's going on over here approach. And I truly believe that Justin isn't not making the policy decisions of these things. He's effectively the spokesperson for the party or the corporation, whatever you want to call it, and he's set up to take in all that that hate, not have his general his board of directors underneath the light, if you will. And and people said some terrible words in there, and people will say horrible words, and you can't just because one person said something, I think somebody called him a Jew in there, that's a terrible thing to say, and it's as a slander. But again, they're people are charged, they're entered, they're they're fired up, they're they feel that this is their opportunity to have their voices heard, because guess what? Canadians have no voice when it actually comes to the government. And they'll say, oh, you can vote, but you can't vote. We live in there's a vote every 4 years, and there's a lot of tricks, and when it comes down to voting, it's become so popularized around single little issues, but ultimately it's nothing kind of really changes with the voting. And so you look to, okay, well, how else can we have our message heard? So people would say, oh, you protest. And last year we had probably the most effective or powerful protest that's ever taken place in Canada, with the truckers coming to Ottawa 17 days in the heart of winter. And speaking a little bit back to what happened before, like, they came, like, the truckers, more than the truckers, the doctors, the scientists, the health experts, the security professionals. There's so many people that came to Ottawa and, like, seeking to have, discourse and debate and ultimately, like, protest these vaccine mandates, and it was on the truckers that was, the whatever the inflection point. But the government then chooses the strategy of, again, you can't, because they're operating on lies and myths. They must engage. They must enrage versus engage. So they stage a couple photos. They use their media partners to propagate, like, this false reality that it's a bunch of, white supremacists, like, unacceptable, misogynistic people, when, like, the truth of the matter was it was completely the opposite. And I will say, like, a lot of these disparaging words that the government and the government spokespeople say is mere projection. Like, they'd be better just to say that into a mirror, because when it comes to this fringe minority, like, they're absolutely in this fringe minority that believe in oligarchical rule, that the people don't have, that don't deserve or have a voice in policy or government. It's become of the government, by the government, for the government, or maybe even of the corporation, by the corporation, for the corporation. And the people have been removed. We don't have the ability to do referendums in Canada. The House of Commons has become, a suspect arena, I believe. After they declared the Emergency Act, to freeze bank accounts and, like, and put additional surveillance power into the government, and financial punishment power via banking partners. And then they held a confidence vote on that as well, which forced an NDP Liberal merger, which guaranteed them power through 2025. In doing that, they guaranteed themselves. There was a key kind of measure in this, and it's pensions for MPs. So they're honestly selfishly operating, and they, by agreeing to this, like, okay, we've got this minority coalition government until 2025, and there's nothing anybody's going to do, because nobody has the power. Like, the Conservatives can't call, can't force an election. And the government has shown that they can do confidence votes, but they've got the NDP on their side. So basically, they have a de facto majority, and there's very little accountability. And since COVID as well, we've seen, there's three branches to government, or to society, and to upholding the rule of law. You've got the you call it, say, the executive branch, the government branch, which is like, the government party. Then you have the legislative, which is really the government, and and the Senate, and these checks that are there to assure to keep the the executive, or the empowered government, on path. And then the third is the judicial branch, and that's our court system, and all the way up to the Supreme Court. Now, when COVID struck, or when COVID was enacted, and everything kind of went nuts, the judicial branch and the legislative branch just stopped effectively, and there was the courts were basically shut down. And then upon reemergence, there's been a big difference between their understanding of the role. It's almost like they're kind of just subservient to the the diktat of the government. So there's a big problem here. We've got challenges, and just to loop this all back, people are pissed off, and they don't have a voice, and they believe that Justin is like, the person that's made all this possible. Justin didn't know. I don't think Justin knew what was going on. I'm not sure if he does know what's going on, but he's set up as this energy vacuum and that people are hating. And when you hate something, when you hate someone, you're actually giving them your energy. So, my advice to everybody is don't even give Justin energy. Like, don't criticize the policies, look towards the greater superstructure. Like, let's identify this, but don't channel all your hate. There's no point in flying those F Trudeau flags. Like, that is part of, like, you're feeding into this split narrative. Encourage coming together and having an open talk. And why won't you have an open talk with people? If it's just so charged, you're like, you think he's going to talk to a bunch of people like in an open fashion who are name calling all this? Like, no, it's not going to happen. Like, as you wouldn't talk to someone who is screaming and yelling and defaming you. So, we need to calm down, settle down, act like adults, and have a conversation, around some serious issues. And their unwillingness to engage on these conversations and instead to, seek to censor, attack, defame, gaslight, do all their little ad hominem attacks that we're seeing the same stuff play out, down south with Kennedy too. It's just indicative of a corrupt and poisoned government.
Yeah, well, I see the environment is trapping people. It's pushing people out to the extremes on both sides, or all sides, because there's more than one, but or more than two. But and that is making it more and more difficult to bring people together. And then we talked about political dysfunctionality, and here it is. I mean, because of what happened yesterday with Justin. Friends of the Simon Wiesenthal Center, so, talking about the video we just watched, you're a pathetic Jew, was shouted, says at least twice, it was more than that. And they're calling on people to, condemn that kind of language. And I didn't want to believe that I was hearing it. But it's clearly there, and I find it very disturbing. And these are people who I think are supposed to be on the freedom side, and we're seeing this sort of cancer growing, and I think it's the result of fear, frustration, paranoia, exposure to probably way too much social media and propaganda, and who knows what. But there it is on display. And on the other side, we're seeing a lot of mental illness and craziness as well. I think some of the crazy people are actually running the government right now. And so again, I just kind of throw it back to you for a final thought on this before we move back to RFK.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, it's like, it's so difficult. Like, maybe that was just an individual doing that. Maybe that was someone from, maybe that was kind of an operative out there, an agent out there saying those words too, because it's just like the Nazi flag at Parliament Hill. And it's like, by doing that, it distracts all the attention from the fact that there's a major issue, and it breaks it down into this one little issue. So, the person who said that, it may have just been someone who is pissed off and really chose improper words, or maybe he threw all of the information that the words that he's been tuning in, really believes that, he's a pathetic, person. But, even that, to create so much energy and be like, oh, someone said that, so therefore, they're going to make a big story out of this. And, oh, poor Justin. And, oh, look, therefore, this one person said that. Maybe it was someone legitimate who believed that. It could also be a provocateur. There's no shortage
Kyle,
of history
I understand.
of that taking place as well.
I have to say that as I've been covering all of this stuff, especially since the convoy, 6 months after, now moving into today, I am seeing honestly, a darker side of things. I'm seeing things that I wish I was not seeing. And again, it's coming out of this frustration with people, I'm sure of it. And they're being exposed to ideas that are being used to kind of pull them over. And I'm really concerned about it. I see it as a cancer within groups of people who are otherwise, great Canadians, great Americans, even. But we've shown people, we've had people on here talking about, well, we showed a guy who's using a swastika, and he came on here to defend it as part of a First Nations thing. And then he came back on, and he's got a new emblem that is almost a carbon copy of the Nazi um, coat of arms from World War II. I mean, I don't mean to, and I wouldn't even focus on this stuff, except that what I'm seeing now is people running to defend it instead of saying, hey, like, we've got a problem here. Let's kind of deal with it. I see people defending it. And that was the case last night when we first ran that clip in the comment section with so many people. We're seeing it on social media today. I find that very concerning, and I see that just
Yeah, I mean,
it's
those are condemning.
yeah.
Those are terrible words. Those are
Yeah.
terrible words. And like, they're coming from one person. They don't represent like, the subset of everybody. It's an emotionally charged environment where
Right.
like, people say stupid things and everything's being recorded. So this is like the importance of being impeccable with your words. Like,
Yeah.
just in general, like everybody, like be impeccable with your words, because like, that type of like, you think you might be doing something good, but at the end of the day, it's going to set it back. Now, this actually taps into a deeper issue, which is there's also like the weaponization of, social media and like, the power of technology to like, let's provide an echo chamber and an arena for a lot of, maybe let's call it kind of hateful discussion or radicalization, if you will. That leads to negative outcomes and more hate and fear and aggression amongst parties. Um, I think that's something just that we need to, be aware of, and I think this is a larger condition that warrants, investigation. And for a long time we've been aware of the tactics of, social media companies and, the dopamine effects of, if you say something and people like it, it's okay. It encourages you to kind of keep going. And and highly divisive posts get a lot of traction. Like when I say something about, Justin's goofball tweets, like those ones go like, mental. But when I say like, say something else about just, naturally like healing and rising above this, it's there's no interaction,
Right.
or very, very little. So, it's but
Yeah,
I
I
I'll
I
say
agree
I
with
condemn those words being used in that thing, and I don't think that that is an appropriate way to show discontent with it. I think you need to organize better. You need to get sound boxes. You need to do better jobs of showing and creating an effective structure of dissent that doesn't involve uttering vulgar words over and over and yelling and swearing nonstop. That doesn't achieve anything. It's like throwing rocks. It's not going to achieve anything. Like actively come together and think about ways that you can do it. Now on Justin's side, he's got a big problem that he can't go anywhere, like in Canada, announced. So likely the reason why they're there is because, it became known that Justin's going to be here at this time. So okay, like these people can come out and and do whatever it is that they did there. But Justin, like, this was not the case 5 years ago for him. He could go anywhere and it was generally a positive environment. But since the actions of his government and and the attacks on the charter rights and freedoms of Canadians, and the the constant propaganda and forced lockdowns, destruction of our economy, mass injection of experimental mRNA technology paid for by the Canadian population, and having our politicians act as salespeople for pharmaceutical companies, and not being able to engage in any discussion around the safety or efficacy of them. I think they've lost a lot of trust of anybody who's concerned about that. I know, as someone with many children, that I give a lot of care towards the health and safety of my family, and I will not do anything that, in my opinion, could be a danger towards myself or my children. So that's why I was absolutely against, this entire injection jab agenda, and having been on this and been engaged with this information war for the last couple decades. This has been something that has been talked about over and over again, that one day they're going to be doing a global injection program, and we had it, and everybody was warned, and I think everybody got the warning that it could be potentially dangerous, but a lot of people just kind of succumbed to it and took it, and I think there needs to be still accountability and responsibility for that. I think we need to have transparency within government as well about how the spending took place, but how much we were paying for each of those things, but how much we were paying for all those goddamn tests, about really open the books, because money talks, and just follow the money, I think, is a really effective kind of line when it comes to understanding what actually took place, because people can say words all day long, but when you follow the money and see how that webs together, and then combine that with the the envisioned rollout of a central bank digital currency, Canada will likely be, we're already kind of in it. They were censoring people's bank accounts. Like, the government has the ability to pull money or stop or freeze your bank account at any moment. So we're basically kind of living in that realm. But if a full digitization of that could really create a surveillance society on Canadians, and if the top and the government is not included in this, it still remains a power of pyramid, with the few overseeing the many. Now, if before we apply that technology to the people, we apply it onto the government and onto all elected officials and onto all businesses that deal with the government and their major shareholders, and we flip the pyramid upside down so that the many can have transparency over the few. I think once you shine light into those shadows, they're not going to want that to happen, and if that was a prerequisite towards deploying it, that would stop it in its track. B, they're not going to want it for their own reasons, of just because the government is incredibly inefficient, and there's a lot of backroom deals, and there's a lot of conflicts of interest that take place. It's not that it's like, it's inherently wrong, but once something is inherent, it's like cheating on your taxes, for example. It's something like, even the tax professionals, they'll encourage you can cheat a little bit. It's like, we cheat so much, and it's like, when that kind of mentality becomes the norm, we got a problem, because honestly, it's like the speed limits. It's like speed limit's 100, but everybody goes 130, and it's like there's a weird gray line between maybe 125 or 135 or 140 that, like, at which point you're going to get pulled over. So when you have these malleable moving goalpost lines, it's emblematic of a broken system, and it's time for us to restructure the model. And so I think one of the paths forward in this is radical transparency and accountability of financial information onto federal government, provincial government, municipal governments, lobbyists, and everybody lobbying, understanding that when contracts are said, like using digital identity, that word on all public servants first to create a transparent data trail to understand how monies are flowing and to assure that when they say we're doing everything legitimately, we're not breaking any rules, that we can trust them because we can verify in order to trust instead of trusting. And I don't think a lot of Canadians trust anymore blindly the government. So that's where I see things going forward. And these are some of the things, same things I see for RFK and Bobby too.
Yeah, and a lot of what you're saying echoes what I've been saying for a while. Your response to the thing from yesterday with your brother, that echoes what I said last night myself. It's like don't react out of emotion. Keep a level head. Think before you speak. Think before you act. Try to take a higher road. Interesting to hear you talk about holding the politicians and bureaucrats and the lobbyists all accountable through a digital trail. Do you still hold out hope that cryptocurrencies or Bitcoin might provide a path to more freedom for people?
Absolutely. I think digital identity is it's become a very loaded word. And long ago, I kind of recognized there's going to be kind of two paths that this thing goes down. It can go down the digital, it can go down the Accenture, IBM, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Deloitte kind of, big corporate integrator plays where like they maintain centralized databases and, they can, at the behest of individuals and super admins, be able to turn things on and turn things off and basically delete people if they wanted or sabotage them, versus the decentralized structure is like anybody can spin up a core identity, we'll call it, and then you can put your different credentials on it. You hold them if you want to provide others access towards saying, like, I went to Dalhousie. I can tell you, Rick, that I went to Dalhousie University. You can say, I don't trust you, verify. So traditionally, you would have to call the university, say, hey, did Kyle go to Dalhousie University class of 2007 or 8 or whatever it was? And like they would go into their record and they'd say, yeah, I guess, to verify. Now, if Dalhousie University issued me a digital credential saying, okay, yes, here's your digital certificate that says you passed here, it can't be forged, it can't be counterfeited, and I hold it, I can simply give you a proof instantly that says, yep, verified, that's done. Then you can take multiple other of these identity shards, in a whole level. And this is, kind of straying a little bit, but there's this opportunity for what's called self-sovereign digital identity, SSDI or SSID. And I think this is a smarter path forward, and this is also a path forward towards securing elections and governance processes as well. Because right now, there's a lot of people concerned. They think the election was stolen. They think, and then the Republicans think the election was stolen. But the previous one, the Democrats thought the election was stolen. Before that, the other party, whoever loses, thinks the election is stolen basically all the time. And there might be merit to it. And and when then you look into the nature of the systems being used, when you have closed source systems, meaning the code is not available for public audit, it means that there can be vulnerabilities. And if you vote for A vote for B might be recorded. And, and when you have the ability for just paper ballots, anybody can create a paper ballot. So it's like, all I need to do is take a ballot, go to Kinko's, create 1,000 more ballots, and all of a sudden I'm sitting on 1,000 ballots. And if I, fill them out and put them in, and if technically they shouldn't be received, but sometimes things get missed. So the existing way, but now if you use the technology behind Bitcoin, the blockchain, distributed ledger technology and tokens, you have a token and you can cast it to Rick for president, Kyle for president. Here's my address. Here's your address. You have one token. you can send it to whichever address, it lands, you can verify it's in that. Very simple. It's like the very simple. Anybody could run for president. And it's like, here's my address and you can send it to that handle. And once it's there, it can't be moved again. So, and it's like, and in order to receive that, it's just like, receiving your, based on your ID, let's say. And I think this might be one of the reasons why they're like against requiring an ID to vote, is because if you require an ID to vote and you imply a system that makes sure there's no duplication, you can't stuff the ballots. So, I look towards this technology, and this was one of the early visions and prophecies and potentialities of blockchain technology. Like when we were looking at when I first started in 2013, 2014, looking at where it could go. There were a lot of projects that attempted it really early on, but now 2023, 10 years later, 13 years in Bitcoin, there's so much development happening all around this ecosystem that I think we're getting a lot closer to it, and a lot of the major challenges and struggles around onboarding and understanding this are being kind of solved. And I think we're going to hit kind of an inflection point, and I think there might be a real demand, desire towards implementing these and actually sitting down and having these conversations where you bring stakeholders together and we agree. Do we want fair elections in America or in Canada? We want fair, like, what's our idea? Like, yes. Like, everyone's like, yes. Anybody who says no, it's like, well, that's no, you don't want them. So, okay. So, but at that level, like, that's a conversation. That's a high level thing that people can agree upon. And then, you can start drilling down. Okay, what are our ideal outcomes for a system? Well, you want to have a private vote. That might be one thing. You want to be able to be able to vote from wherever you are, because turns out Tuesdays between 9 a.m. and 10 p.m. or 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. is kind of a restrictive window, and at a physical location, it's kind of difficult. And when you introduce the mail into it, adds some other variability. So it's like we want to make sure that your vote casted is a vote counted. It can't be flipped to another thing. There's an accountable trail, but there's also privacy in the individual's votes, so that they can verify their vote counted properly, but others can't verify that Kyle made the vote for Rick as in an easy fashion. So anyways, this is the important kind of convening discussion, because once you identify the ideal outcomes and you get the stakeholders involved, then you can put forth the challenge about how do we solve this. Go towards the free market with, we're looking for a solution that enables secure voting, and it meets these ideal outcome requirements that we've carefully designed and considered. And now submit your proposal. If you can do something that does this, that does all of this, guess what? We're going to implement it, and we're going to review these and then implement these. And when you bring all the stakeholders towards engaging on that, then you actually have buy-in from the network or from the people towards enacting that. Versus if an outside group, if the PPC, for example, decides, okay, we're going to build this whole secure thing that does everything, but they don't engage with the other parties, someone just coming to them, people going, nope, we weren't involved in the discussion of this at all. So they're just going to naturally distrust it, and it might not, be adopted, even if it satisfies everything. So that's why it's critically important to have an open discourse and convene with all sides towards looking at these solutions. Fortunately, there are these discussions taking place, and we need to elevate the conversation around that, because at the end of the day, the way the system that we have right now is not working. The people do not have a voice. There is no accountability and no responsibility of our elected officials, and and it's having a huge negative toll on Canadians, both spiritually but also financially and mentally.
So is it realistic to think that getting somebody like Kennedy elected would even make a difference, or is the system still viable? Can it be fixed? By electing somebody like
Great,
Robert F.
great,
Kennedy Jr.?
great question. Yeah, I mean, I think it's, you know, there's an opportunity here to for a movement to build around him, and if he can catalyze, Donald Trump by the end had a list of 90 million people within his campaign. That's a lot of people that can be enacted. Now, do all of them necessarily support him still? Probably not. But that was part of it. And if right now Bobby's going after the DNC ticket, the Democratic nomination. He's going to have to get through the DNC, which is a embedded, in my opinion, corrupt establishment, gatekeeping association. And nobody's there's no person it's just the DNC. It's kind of mysterious kind of vacuum of energy. So Bobby's got to kind of come after that. But the other thing about Bobby is he's attracting incredible people all around him. So at the Senate testimony yesterday, you probably saw Dennis Kucinich right behind him. But sitting right next to Dennis Kucinich was Charles Eisenstein. And Charles Eisenstein is one of the greatest writers of our time. He wrote the book called Sacred Economics. He's written prolific essays. You should check out. There's an essay called Mob Morality and the Unvaxxed. Just a phenomenal article about the danger of groupthink and how anyways, but what I get to is he's attracting amazing people around him, and at the end of the day, politics is kind of a talent show. And it's if you get the best people on your side, if you become the cool place to be, everyone wants to go to the cool party. Generally people want to to be part of something, be part of the movement. They don't want to be fighting the movement. So these Debbie Wasserman Schultz and that other lady, I don't know, and all those relics of the system, those system Democrats, those big Democrats, they're not. That's not cool. Biden's not cool. It's I will say going out there and crossing there's not one. I don't know. Let's say this. Not one person was Biden is a good man and qualified to be president. Not one person said that. And the fact that the establishment is saying he's still the most qualified to be the nominee and should continue in presidency, when I don't think he could be hired as a manager at Walmart. I think he might be able to be hired as a cashier at Walmart, maybe as a greeter. But if you can't be hired as a cashier or a greeter at Walmart, but you think you have legitimate right to run for presidents,
right?
And there's tons of swearing in that earlier clip. So give me a fucking break. That's what I say. This is unbelievable, and you won't have a debate with Bobby. Because a lot has happened in the last couple of years. There's a proxy war going on in Ukraine. There are serious questions of ethical activities and behaviors on behalf of the big guy and the big boy. Call him that. There's a lot of questions that require some open, honest discourse. And by the time you get to the presidential debates, next August, next September, October, it could be, there might not have been any debates until then. So, this is why I think honestly, the free market will solve this. And with all these podcasts and with what we saw with Rogan, offering to pay $100,000 to Peter Hotez, pharmaceutical salesman, to debate Bobby, and he refused, and the pot got up to almost $3 million. And he still refused. It shows, but I think there's going to be an opportunity for and I'm certainly encouraging. I would encourage Bobby and others to continue in this policy of having open, honest discussions. And if you can't have a debate organized by the DNC or CNN or CNBC or one of those legacy media organizations, why don't we just do it ourselves? You've got the All In podcast guys, basically going on that podcast was a debate, but why don't you stick Ron DeSantis on the other side there? Invite, create a forum, have that discussion, before even dealing in in like, the two, before even just focusing on Republican or Democrat, why don't we just jump it? Let's have a good open conversation right now. Because I think, Ron and Bobby would have a great discussion. I think a lot of people would tune in and listen to that. Or I think Vivek and Bobby would have a great discussion. And honestly, I think Bobby and Biden would be an unbelievable, opportunity for Biden to show that he is capable of being president, and that he is capable of being a representative of America when in the face of other leaders of the nation, of the world. Because if you can't engage in a little bit, how are you expected to do like effective diplomacy? Otherwise, it's just become clear that the presidency is a joke, and it's an office, and it's being run by people in behind, and Joe Biden is basically just a walking teleprompter, Manchurian candidate.
So let's say he is successful. I mean, I don't know if Biden will even make it into the next election. He's clearly failing cognitively. I think he's suffering from dementia. If he falls by the wayside, RFK Jr. is the only viable candidate for the DNC that I see. So at that point, it becomes a race between. At this point, it looks like Trump. What's the difference between him and Trump in your view?
Well, I think like ego is probably like the biggest difference, and like principle of selflessness. Trump, has a lot of amazing qualities, but one of the things I think he lacks is the ability to ever kind of declare that he was wrong or did something wrong. And I think, Operation Warp Speed, having Tony Fauci, within his cabinet and continuing to support him, being proud about rushing an experimental vaccine to the market, and like he ultimately triggered the lockdowns as well. And I think that was the end of his time. And I think, having been questioned and challenged about that. Also, he's gone pretty silent too. Like he doesn't engage in open conversations, with anybody. He does his rallies, and he's able to like connect and create the rallies. And he's an amazing speaker. And and I think people are just a little bit tired of Trump, because here in Canada, it's unbelievable. Like the hate towards Trump. I mentioned the word Trump. If I just say the word Trump around my mother, it's like, I mean, it's like, she always to the point where I mentioned the word, I said like Max Bernier and Nazi, because like, Warren Kinsella and the strategic communications team, in part with the Liberals, like did a brilliant job of smearing and creating, a large amount of hate for, Max Bernier and other freedom lovers, and whatever you want to call them, awakened Canadians who are just asking questions. All of a sudden, you're Nazi, which is like which is a very kind of triggering thing. So, with Trump, it's like the last election. It wasn't that like 75 million or 76 million people voted for Trump, and 80 million people voted against Trump, or maybe 70 million plus like 10 million in fabrication voted against Trump. It wasn't that they were voting for Biden. It's like they spent 4 years fomenting so much hate towards this, that it all became about this. And even in that testimony yesterday, it's like Trump. It's like he's the devil. So it's like America's not getting healed with Trump. It just continues to be divided. There's no healing with Trump. No Democrats are coming around to Trump. Versus Republicans are interested in Bobby. Independents are interested in Bobby. Democrats are interested in Bobby. We've undergone a radical experiment the last 3 years with this whole COVID scamdemic. And let's try a new radical experiment of hope and unity and open, honest discussion as a new path forward. And honestly, I think Bobby is like, the man. And so far, it seems like he's doing like, he's doing everything, really well. and he's definitely like, you know, a spiritual kind of grounded individual. The ego isn't there. He takes care of himself. His family is, you know, is brilliant. I had a chance to meet some of his sons. They're all incredible, like, you know, knowledgeable, healthy people. Within the family, obviously, there's some, you know, some disagreements, but that's true with all families. I certainly know that. You certainly know that too. Everyone knows that, you know, not all your siblings are going to agree, and especially when you've got like 10 siblings or however many he has. It's a massive family. And like, you know, amongst the family and with the legacy, like there's a lot of resonance to JFK and RFK from back in the day. So when you talk about like the boomer vote or like, you know, or the elder vote, there's a lot of people that'll see Kennedy and just say Kennedy. So it's like, you know, it's I can understand why the White House is trying to continuously censor everything that Bobby has to say. And, you know, and them doing that and being caught doing that only shows, you know, how they continue to operate from a place of fear. And I don't believe Bobby is operating from a place of fear, but he is conscious of danger as well. And I think that's an important lesson for everybody. It's like, don't let fear dictate your actions, but don't be, don't ignore danger. Danger is something to, like, you know, to understand and to react to, but fear of something that might be is a tool for control.
Gotcha. Well, Kyle, that gets us through an entire hour here. And I'll just ask you, is there anything else you'd like to add or think that I might have missed?
Rick, I just want to say thank you. What a great thought provoking hour of discussion. Appreciate you. To anybody who's watching this, appreciate you. And yeah, feel free to connect on Twitter at Kyle Kemper. Go to foreverfree.com to, you know, order some brochures for Kennedy and, you know, spread them around. Like, you know, people were wondering, why are you driving around a Kennedy bus in Canada? That's weird. I was like, I wanted to get some smoked meat in Montreal, so we drove it downtown Montreal. That was pretty fun. And then I visited my 102-year-old grandfather in Ottawa and showed him the bus, and he was super stoked on that. And then went to Parliament Hill. There was a big kind of protest for Haiti going on there. Parked the bus out front. Got that symbolic honk honk in. Connected with a couple people there. That was nice. And then, you know, we're spending some time with the family, and then and continue this. And I'd encourage anybody to you know, get involved however they like. And yeah, just say, or not. It's all good. Like, you know, just hope you're having a great day. And yeah, keep on smiling. Keep the vibrations high. That's all we can do.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Kyle. It's I'm so appreciative for you spending the time here today. It's been a great conversation, and I look forward to having you back.
My pleasure.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.